Scuba Goat Under the Sea, the podcast for the inquisitive diver.
Hey there, dive buddies, and welcome to the show. I'm joined today by a local dive pro, Graham Willis, who not only works in the industry, but he's co-authored a travel guide for divers and snorkelers alike covering New South Wales. Joining forces with a good buddy of his, they've created a book with over 400 images and 100 dive site maps. Entitled The Dive Spots of New South Wales, it's a must for anyone needing a compilation of local knowledge for diving in the region, and it's also got a pretty sexy shark on the front cover too. Graham, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Thanks very much, Matt. No, great. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us along, and hopefully we'll have a good chat generally about diving, a little bit about the book, but not too much probably about that.
Well, the good thing is that you come into the studio, and it's the first time I've had anyone in the studio since COVID for ages. So thanks for the beer.
Oh, no, that's a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers indeed.
Beauty. Okay, let's have a bit of a background on you, actually,
Sure.
before we get into the book, or the books, should I say. There's two here.
Yep. So I've been diving for a few years now, sort of certified in 81, 82. Was diving for a bit before that and thought, I should really go and get certified. So I did. And I was lucky. I was living overseas. My dad worked for Shell, so we moved all around the world. And I started diving in Oman, which at the time, at the time there was no diving there at all, hardly. Nothing commercial at all.
So were you living out of Muscat then?
Yeah. Well, we're living in closer to Matra, so
Yeah.
north of that. But
I was due to move there when I was 14 years old.
yeah,
My dad was he was a drilling manager based out of Muscat.
right. Yeah, that was a good spot. I was so my dad was there for a while, and then I worked there as well in the oil exploration industry. Mind you, we weren't anywhere near the water. We were in the middle of the desert, but that is where I started diving. Did a lot of snorkeling, Spiro at the time. I've got over that now.
Yeah.
A lot of people started there. And then travelled around after that with the oil business, places like Somalia, not so good.
Yeah.
Madagascar, interesting, which allowed us access to Mauritius, La Réunion, South Africa, and actually went off to Thailand to do my licence there. So,
Okay. Yeah. I've got to go back to Oman. I've not spoken to anyone about Oman for years.
Yeah.
So what years were you there?
Good question. Probably 76 to 81.
Okay.
Around that period.
Yeah, a little bit before we were meant
Yeah.
to. We were meant to go out there, I think it was 88.
Right.
Yeah. I was a lot younger than you, clearly.
Clearly. And better looking as well. But what can I say?
Hey, did they have the Solus bar? Was that? Do you remember that? It was on one of the expats.
Not that I recall.
No.
There was, you might have, I don't know what was taking you out there, but there were, oh, that's right, your dad was in the drilling industry, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There was a vibrant SAF club there with the army. There were a lot of people out from the UK working with the Omani forces out there, and that was right beneath us, the house there, so that was handy. And then there was a club for PDO, which was the oil company itself, and they had their own club. So outside of that, that was my kind of environment, really.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure my old man's going to listen to this at some point, so there you go, Dad. You got Oman on the show now, so you're a happy man.
We can talk about that later. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, he fell in love with the country.
I liked it. I really liked it. Very, very different, from down south and the Jebel and anyway, all of that sort of stuff. But now quite a diving destination. And it wasn't in my day at all.
Yeah. But when you look at the map for the diving, it's more northern Oman, is it?
Yeah, so I think it's up at Musandam, which is further north. It's sort of right at the tip there.
Yeah.
But equally, down past Muscat, there's some diving down there. I saw some familiar names. Went, oh, okay, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they built a big coast road there to make it much more accessible. It was pretty inaccessible when I was
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's one of those locations that people don't think about going on holiday, but some of the resorts and hotels in Muscat itself are just insanely good, aren't they?
They are, and I've spoken to people who have been, and they absolutely loved it. It's obviously quite a different environment. I enjoyed the Arabic culture side of it and some of the more traditional components, but I can imagine it's a good spot to go.
Yeah, yeah. Do you still speak Arabic, or has it dwindled?
Shway bas, yeah. Alfie shway Arabic, yeah.
Yeah, mine dwindled a few years ago. Yeah.
Don't use it much in Wollstonecraft and Roseville, I must admit.
Yeah, fair one. And sorry, and I interrupted you there as well. So where did we go after that?
So I spent some time in Madagascar. A couple of years there. That's a pretty interesting spot, I've got to say. A really interesting spot. And that let me do quite a lot of diving in Mauritius and South Africa, which I really enjoyed. As I said, and I figured, okay, after 70 or 80 dives, I thought I'd better go and get certified. So I did, and I chose somewhere nice and warm and easy to do that in Thailand, which was good fun. The course, put it this way, the course is much easier if you've done a little bit of diving, you kind of know what to expect, but equally there's a lot you don't know. So, I think it's a good thing.
Well, it formalises everything, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It does. And there's some theory in there which is, I think, good to know, and continues to be good to know as you move on and become a DM or an instructor or whatever it is. I think it's good to have that theory underneath you.
Yeah, yeah. So, just thinking back to South Africa, did you manage to get on the sardine run at all?
No. Again, wasn't really a thing then. I'm not saying that there was no sardine run, but there was no commercial component and diving component to that.
Yeah.
So the diving I did there was a place called Sodwana Bay. Which is just
on Aliwal Shoal.
Some of the best visibility I've ever seen in my life.
Really,
absolutely phenomenal. Pretty rough and ready in those days. It might still be. I don't know. You launched on a rib and had to sort of zoom around, waiting for the right break in the waves, and off you went. And then you got deposited. I think there were like 2, 3, and 5 mile reef or something like that.
Yeah.
Memory's a bit scratchy, but the visibility was just fantastic. And there was a pod of dolphins that was swimming along with us on the way out. So they stopped the boat and said, anyone want to get in? I went, yes. No one else did, which I found quite interesting. So I had to paddle around with them for a bit, and it was fabulous. And then also down south in the Cape, which is an awful lot colder, I got to say, a place called Hout Bay, and a couple of the wrecks there, and the seal colony. Didn't bump into any great whites, which is nice. But that was a bit of fun too. So after that, moved actually back to the Middle East, to Qatar. Again, worked there for about a year and a half, something like that. And then I left the industry and came over to Australia.
Happy days.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to check online, because Aliwal Shoal, I might be getting confused. Is Aliwal Shoal, Sodwana Bay is itself, and then Durban is Aliwal Shoal, isn't it?
Yeah, so Sodwana's a bit further up,
I
think, than Aliwal, but I haven't dived Aliwal. So.
Yeah. No, I did the two together as a mate of mine. It was his 40th a few years ago, just before COVID, actually, 2018. So we went and did Kruger Park, and then down to Sodwana Bay. Did a few days there, and then moved down to Durban, where we met up with another couple of mates to go up and do the sardine run. Yeah,
I think it's going to be tricky to get over there for a little bit, especially with new variants coming out now, which seem even worse, unfortunately.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think we're going to be doing any proper travelling for many a year yet, unfortunately.
Well, hang on. I've got a 3 planned next year.
I'm keeping my fingers and nuts crossed, mate. I've got a big Galapagos trip that we've postponed from 2019 to now 2023.
Fantastic. I'd love to do that. No, that's not in the planning. But next year there is some planning to do. Indonesia, Philippines and Palau. So we'll see.
Yeah, fair one. And whereabouts in Thailand did you do your training? Was it on Koh Tao or?
I'd have to go and look. I think it was somewhere salubrious like Pattaya or somewhere like that. So it would just be out of there in one of the dive shops there.
Yeah. That's quite a while ago anyway.
It is. It is indeed. It is indeed.
And bringing us up to date, you're now working out at Frog Dive Sydney?
Yeah, so I work with the team at Frog Dive. I instruct there and enjoy that. I probably most enjoy the photography side of it and teaching that, but still do open water and advanced and deep and all of those components as well. So I really enjoy that. They're a good team to work with.
Yeah.
And nice to have the pool out the back, which helps with the teaching side of it. Good group to work with. Enjoy bringing people into the sport. In fact, one day I remember I was just doing the confined water. It was an older gentleman, and at the end of the day, he said, "That is the best thing I have ever done." He hadn't even got out of the pool. So I'm thinking, wow, your mind is going to go mad when we get in the ocean. But it's fantastic. You forget that. You dive so much yourself, you kind of forget that amazement at just being able to be underwater and what a different feeling it is for people, I think.
To be honest, I remember the first time I put on a scuba kit. I had no clue what was going on. I was just doing a tri dive.
Yeah.
And I can even remember the instructor dragging me around by the tank and the LPI hose. But I actually cried on the dive. I was that happy to be underwater and actually experience it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right, you do forget it. You know, you teach so many people, it just becomes second nature, and you every now and then there's that little button that presses and goes, aha, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes you just got to remember that as well. This is a completely new experience for people. 9 times out of 10, it's a completely new experience. It's a completely foreign environment to them. Yes, they're there for a reason, sometimes slightly the wrong reason. Why are you here? Well, because my boyfriend's doing it, or because my girlfriend's doing it, rather than because I want to do it, which is can be interesting to work with sometimes. Or my dad said I had to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's going to be interesting as well. But generally, people are there because they want to experience something different. They're probably going to go off on a holiday or something like that to Fiji, and they want to be able to dive. And it's a privilege, actually, to be part of their diving journey and just introduce them to it, I think. Yeah,
it's a beautiful sport. So, tell me about this. How did this little book come about?
This little book, yeah.
Oh, not so little.
Well, it is really compared to some of the tomes out there, but nonetheless. Well, I was at a dive show in Sydney, and in fact, I was chatting to a friend of mine who runs a resort in Sulawesi to Benakan. The resort's called Thalassa Resort, and Simone Gerritsen runs that and has done for years. And she's a fantastic person, very generous spirit, runs a great resort in a really good part of the world for diving. If you haven't been over to Benakan, Sulawesi diving, so that's out of Manado, you need to get over there because you can do the walls of Benakan on one side and you can do the Lembe Straits for the Macra on the other side. It's just great spot. And
I'd echo that with you. In fact, I touched on Benakan and Lembe when I had, who was I talking to? Oh, it was Debbie from Dive Planet.
Dive Planet.
Yeah, right. We were talking about going around the world and all that kind of thing. But you hit the nail on the head there. To be able to do the drifts and get the big wide-angle shots on the photography and then pop across to Lembe and do the macro.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic spot.
It is. But even at Lembe, when you get outside the heads there, some dives called Angel's Window and stuff like that, it's completely changed. It's not macro, it's the coral, it's the wide angle. It's fantastic. So just love it. And the pricing is very, very, very reasonable.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen to the airfares post-COVID. Singapore Airlines used to fly in there. That was the best way of getting there.
Yeah.
Garuda, the other option there. So I don't know what's going to happen to the airfares, but I bet it's still reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. I think Garuda's probably a safe bet.
Yeah.
I'd stay away from Nadair, just putting that out there, because they've taken our money and not given us a refund and not given us a ticket to book another flight, so they can get bad rep right here, right now.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So Simone was at the dive show and she introduced us to this guy called Johan Boshoff, whom I hadn't met before. Now, Johan is from South Africa. He'd come over a few years previously, and in South Africa, he'd written a book, Dive Spots of South Africa, Dive Spots of Mozambique, and then he moved over to WA and wrote Dive Spots of WA. And he was at the show and he had his books there. And Simone introduced us and said, well, I don't know about you two, but maybe you want to do something on New South Wales. Now, Johan's never dived in New South Wales, so it would be tricky for him to write it.
Yeah.
But what he did have was all of the experience of laying out the book, all of the programs for that. He had an approach and a methodology. And if you look at the other two books, or he's actually written more than that, but if you look at the other two Dive Spot books, you'll see a very, very similar format. And the idea is not to cover every single dive site. That's impossible. I mean, put it this way: you throw a pick in on a boat and you dive, and that's a dive spot. You might, so you can't do that. What you can do is probably pick out some of the major ones in each of the spots there, and there'll be disagreement about that. Someone will say, "Oh, you left out A, left out B. Why did you cover C? That's a dreadful dive." Whatever it is, that's fine. That's fine. I'm happy with the feedback. But there was an opportunity to do that. We said, "Yep, let's make it work." Progress was a little bit slow initially because I had a full-time job going on as well. But then with COVID kicking along, that gave us the opportunity to work absolutely full-time on the book and crank it out.
Yeah.
So that was in March 2020, and then we published it in July, August 2020.
Yeah, because I think we initially, I might have actually commented on your initial post about the book launch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's when we first started kind of, do you call it chatting online or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Commenting?
Actually, I think, to be honest, that was the second. It was a kind of relaunch almost. Okay. So it'd been out there for probably a year or so.
Yeah, yeah.
But interesting launching anything in COVID, apart from possibly a boat. That's the way it is. And obviously the dive industry's had it much harder than, two of us writing a book, for goodness sake. So...
So it's obviously taken a lot of research. I'm just flicking through the book now. It's beautiful. It's put together really nicely.
Oh, thank you.
But it must have taken an awful lot of time to pull all the photographs together, the information, the text. You've got GPS coordinates for everything that's in here. You've been a busy boy, haven't you?
Yeah, it did. It did take a fair amount of research, and obviously you want it to be correct. Now, having said that, we don't want people navigating to the spot exactly by boat, going, well, hang on, you're 20 metres out. You go, okay. And there's a kind of disclaimer to that. But you will be pretty much in the zone, and in most cases you'll be bang on with that. Where can you get your boat in some cases? Because we know that not everyone can either do a shore dive or not everyone wants to go with a commercial operator because that can get a bit pricey. So, how can you do this yourself? We know that not everyone's diving. So there's some good spots pulled out there for snorkelers as well. And it was fun. It was fun to do. It was a lot of work, but it was fun to do that because it got me off to do some dives. I've never done that. I better go and do it.
Better go and have a look for myself.
I better go and have a look. Exactly.
Yeah. That was my excuse when I started my tour company, and it was global. So I was just going off to Indonesia and Thailand. And
why didn't I think of that? Why did I just write a book? But it was a great way also of getting, for instance, down to Eden to do some of the dives down there. Damn cold.
Really?
Really cold. So we went down there, I think it was in March, and thought, that's, end of summer, it's still pretty warm, the water.
Yeah.
So we went outside to do the first dive, and that was 12 degrees. And we thought, it's cold. And we were in wetsuits because I do dive in a dry suit, but we thought, no, it'll still be warm. And then came inside to dive the chip mill pier there. And it was 10 degrees. So it's like, jeez. Anyway, but they're great dives, good operators down there, so that was nice. And equally, likewise, up at Tweed Heads, getting up to the northern side there, because there were a couple of dives I hadn't done there as well. I'm sure there's plenty of dives I haven't done, but there were a couple I wanted to do there as well. So a good excuse to get out.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we've spoken briefly, but you had chats every now and then with Michael McFadden, the old man that seems to know all of New South Wales.
And he does. Look, tremendous. So Michael's stuff is tremendous resource. End of story. And this is in no way meant to replace it. So let me put that out there. It does not in any way replace it. It does have more information about what's available in the area rather than just the dive site. So if you're going there, is there a hospital there? Is there a bank there? Those sort of things. So if you want to pick it up and travel, then it's a useful one to use for that.
Yeah.
But Michael's done an awful lot of stuff. And certainly I shot a note off to Michael and I said, look, whatever research I do, your stuff seems to come up. And even if people haven't acknowledged it, it still comes up.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've changed the words. Quite often they haven't. Yeah. And so on and so forth. So would you be amenable to us using some of your material? Michael came back and he said, yes. However, if you're going to do that, then each time you do that, you need to acknowledge me as the author of that, point to the website for that. That was going to be a very cumbersome way of putting the book together. So there's no disrespect to Michael at all. He's got tremendous knowledge and he's given the dive industry a lot. And certainly my students, when I'm saying that, say, look at Michael's site. Yeah. If you want to have a look at what's going on, go to Michael's site after you've bought my book. But so I think they fill slightly different purposes as well. His research on some of the historic wrecks and things is fantastic. Always read it. Always have a look at it. No, Michael's given a lot to the industry and continues to do so.
Yeah, yeah. And I see you've star rated the dive sites as well.
Yes, always dangerous that one. Stick your
star
rating
topic,
in.
Isn't it?
Well, it is a bit. Because let's face it, you can go to a spot, you can have an absolutely fabulous dive, and you go, well, that's a 5-star spot. But if you've been there several times and you talk to people, you go, no, that was the best dive I've ever done there, and I've been diving this for N years.
Yeah.
It's not normally that good. So, of course, it's up to us or up to me writing the book in terms of that, but it certainly offered a lot of feedback from people. If you had to rate the dives in the area, what would you say is your go-to dive?
Yeah.
And even in Sydney, there's a bit of north versus south. Well, it's like, why would you go north of the harbour? All the best dives are south. There's good dives south and north, I would suggest.
Yeah.
And obviously you do more diving where it's easiest for you to do that, as simple as that. But I think that most of the 5-star rated dives, the majority of people would go, I can see why that would be rated that way. If you pick out Southwest Rocks, for example, it can be dreadful.
Yeah.
You might not even get in the cave. The visibility might be 3 metres and a raging current out the front.
Yeah.
It might be a dreadful day. On balance, it's a 5-star dive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that particular location's a cracking example of what it's like in New South Wales as a whole, because the biodiversity is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Yeah.
If you're talking about Southwest Rocks and you can see everything from nudibranchs to shoaling fish,
Absolutely.
sharks, and the odd humpback whale popping by.
Well, talking about humpback whales, I was diving down in Jervis Bay probably 4 years ago now, and I had my daughter diving with us as well, and she hadn't done many dives. Very comfortable in the water, but probably 30 or 40 dives, something like that. Yeah. And had the rig down there, and we were diving a place called Nudie Wall. So, funnily enough, macro lens on, of course. Jump in. My daughter points excitedly into the distance, and I go, what's that? And whatever it is has just disappeared. And then I see a white streak, and I thought, I think that's a sap hanging in the water. I know what it is, but I've never seen one. It wasn't. It was the front edge of the pectoral fin of a humpback. So this baby humpback sweeps over us. I mean, very close indeed, very close. Yeah. 4 times, just comes back and round. And apparently what it did was pop up, have a look at the boat, and there were 2 other sets of divers out, had a look at them, and then came back again. And this was a baby, so 5 metres or something. Yeah. And not this season's, I don't think, but previous season maybe. Mm-hmm. And then Mum obviously said, stop playing with the divers, and off it went. But you go, macro lens. Thank you so much. Luckily, a friend of mine had a GoPro, so I've got the footage to prove it. But my daughter thinks that's normal. Well, you go down for a dive at Jervis Bay and there's humpbacks, surely.
Yeah, there's humpbacks,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, 5-star dive for her.
Yeah. Not surprised.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe take her a while to top that one.
It will. I think she's realised that. She hasn't done much diving recently.
Yeah, but I mean, like I say, on the biodiversity side, if we could example that down in Jervis Bay or even more locally, Shelley Beach.
Yes.
Generally, I'll jump in there with a wide-angle lens every time, or the steps at Kurnell, something like that. However, I go somewhere like Chowder Bay and we're macro time.
Absolutely.
Don't even bother with wide angle. However, you can see large rays there.
You do, quite often. Yeah. Some missing a tail.
Yeah.
The stumpy's been around a long time.
A long time, yeah.
Long time.
I don't know, how old do those things go?
I honestly don't know, but that one's been around certainly for 8 or 9 years at least, and quite possibly a lot longer than that, but certainly I'm aware of it over that period of time. It'd be fair to say it scares the bejesus out of new divers.
It made me double take when I was down there. I think it was my first or second dive down there, and 2-3 metre viz, and just saw this movement out the peripheral vision, and by Christ, he was close.
They just sweep in amongst the pilings there, and off it goes. But again, as you say, the diversity. Yes, it's a macro site, definitely. Mm-hmm. But again, you get some of the warmer species come down there as well, and you suddenly find something. You go, hang on, I didn't know you got ghost pipefish here.
Yeah.
Example. And normally you don't, but occasionally you do.
Yeah. Did you see those photos that Salvo got of them? So
I did.
Yeah.
I had a chat with Salvo about them and where he got them.
A big shout out to him as well. He's just won a photography award.
He has. He's done tremendously well. I think he took about 2 or 3 awards out.
Yeah.
He's been greedy.
It was about bloody time as well.
Yeah. Good on him.
Yeah, high five, Salvo. Well done, son. Now, you've given me 2 books,
I have.
which I'm very grateful for, and you've written on the inside. I'll read that later. But the Marine Species Guide. So what's the format here? Did the dive spots come first and Marine Species second?
So the Marine Species Guide is a second or third edition. Might be a third edition, actually.
Okay.
So Johan had put that together. Mm-hmm. And so, look, why don't we sort of, update that? I think it'll take us a couple of days to do that. And I had a good look at it, and I went, mate, it's not a couple of days to do that. We need to. It's not just New South Wales fish, nor is it meant to be. If you look at the coelacanth on page, I think 53 or whatever, it'll probably tell you that. It is a broader look at marine species, but I thought it was just interesting because it's pretty simple and. You look at the pen and ink drawing above it and you go, oh, why would you use that? But actually to identify fish by some of the key features and shape rather than by colour can be pretty useful. Sometimes the photographs are very helpful. Sometimes they're not quite so helpful. And then just a basic part about the habitat and lifestyle and where you can find them, what they can grow. So I thought it was a simple guide that I was happy to help update and also include more species that we find in Australia in it because it was originally put together in South Africa and change out some of those things. And some of the orders and genuses had changed as they do as scientists shuffle fish around and nudibranchs around into give them different names again. So some of the stuff had changed. So it was a good opportunity for me again to dive into an area, no pun intended, that I'm always interested in but can always learn so much more about in terms of species and those sort of things. So that was the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the prime things as well. You never stop learning, do you, when you're looking in the water?
Absolutely. And that is part of it, whether it be diving and what you do in diving. And last week you were talking with Jeff about technical diving and some of those components, and there's always more you can do and learn if that's what you wish to do. But equally, I suppose technically it's not unlimited, the number of species and stuff out there, but there's more than I will ever see in my lifetime. And there's always stuff that we're learning about them. There's always stuff that we can do to help protect the oceans and what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis, because I think we're privileged to see that, and I hope we continue to see it. But as a race, we're doing our level best to eliminate, I think, large components of the fish life out there. Unfortunately,
we're doing a good job of cocking it up.
Yeah, we are.
I think we've got to kind of view it now as we've kind of ballsed it up, and it's going to get worse. But if we can do our very best to slow that rate, I think that's the best we can aim for at the moment. Me personally.
Yeah, I think, an example would be humpbacks, for example. We hunted them to near extinction, blue whales exactly the same, and then there's a moratorium on whaling for the vast majority of countries in the world. Japan's really for political reasons, to be honest. The young people really don't eat whale meat. I spent some time in Japan and they're just not interested, but you still have these shops full of whale meat because it's government supported. Hopefully they'll come on board too. However, that aside, the moratorium on whaling has meant that the whale numbers have reached now healthy levels in some species really quite quickly. Humpbacks being probably the best of those, but I noticed that the blue whale numbers are increasing markedly as well. Southern Rights I don't know enough about, and minkies I think are also on the way up, and that's great. So it can change, and it can change reasonably quickly, and by that I mean 10 or 15, 20 years, not 2 or 3. But you're right, small things that we can do either to slow down the rate of change, whether that be climate change or just overfishing in many cases. I mean, shark finning, for example, just ridiculous behaviour. Anything we can do to stop that or slow that down, I think, is of value.
Well, we can get the Australian politicians to pull all the nets and the drum lines out of the water for starters.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Completely with
any opportunity to get that one in there, I will.
No. And if you'd like me to second it, I'll second it now.
Yeah, good on you. Cool. So when's the third book? What's next?
Well, if you want a couple of thousand copies, I've got them at home. So I'd like to try and move these out first. COVID has slowed not only this down, but obviously the whole industry down. Luckily, it doesn't really go out of date. Some of the details about a service station being open might be out of date, but the actual dive sites don't go out of date. And that's why we haven't also listed operators and those sort of things in there, because unfortunately they do change.
Yes.
They come and go. We certainly say go and talk to your local dive operator. They are the best people to talk to about a dive site if you want to dive. Don't rely on this. Don't just rely on McFadden's guide as well. Go and talk to your local dive shop. Use them, and funnily enough, you'll have a dive industry for a while. If you buy everything online at the lowest price from overseas, you're not going to have a local dive industry.
No. And that's a very good point. And the other thing that I wanted to bring in as well is that having a physical book, there's something special about having something you can refer to. And I don't know whether it's born out of me doing a lot of liverboards or in fact, being trip leader or all that kind of thing. Having a library of books there that you can actually sit after a dive and find the fish that you've been down and viewed. And if for those old people who like to log what they've seen, I say old people, young people
I'm in
as
that.
well. But
I still log it.
I still, anything new that I see, I like to make a note of it, and if I'm lucky enough to get a photograph as well, it's a bonus. But to have a book to go through rather than just being yet another moment of jumping onto Google or everyone seems to jump on the bandwagon of let's jump on Facebook and ask the question of what this is. Well, grab a book and have a look.
Well, that's right. It is. I don't. But when I see people, does anyone know a good dive site here? I go, there's a really good book out there that'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And if you do basic homework, you'll find that on Michael's site, for example. Yeah. Go and talk to your local dive shop. You'll find out. So there's absolutely a place for the community as well to help, because I think the community is pretty helpful. Yeah. When you put something out there, whether people lose something or they're asking a question about it, people are keen to help, and I think that's great as a community. Personally, and maybe it's because I'm old-fashioned, I like to pick up a book and have a leaf through it. Go, what if we went from here to here? Where does that look like? And I think a book still has its place. Chuck it in the glove box. You're heading down to, you were up at Putty Beach the other day, I think you said.
That's right.
Yeah. So if you're heading north, okay, where should I go? Can I nip into Nelson Bay? What happens if I go there? Are there any dive sites? Oh, yeah, 3 or 4. Fantastic.
Exactly.
I can, and then talk to the local dive shop as well.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't replace that, but I've got a library full of books about diving and fish ID and teaching and all of those components, hyperbaric medicine, because it's interesting. And yes, I can probably jump online and get an article on it, but it's all in one place for me.
Yeah. And
I like that.
6, 10, 12 months down the line, you want to refer back to that article, chances are you're not going to know where you found it online.
I can't find anything on Facebook about 10 seconds after I've looked at it. It kind of zooms off into hyperspace. I can't find it even when I want it.
Yeah, fair one. How are we doing that beer?
I'm going well. Yeah. Did you need another one, did you?
I'd like another one.
Did you? Would you? Okay, well, hang on. I'll just reach into my magic pile.
Yeah, he's holding the coolie box at the moment.
There we go.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm doing too much talking and not enough drinking. That's fine.
No, it's great. It's great. You carry on.
Well, you shouldn't mix diving and drinking, as we know. So.
It's really nice to be coming into the studio and talking to someone face to face instead of over the internet.
Yep.
And predominantly because of all the crazy lockdowns that we've had here in Sydney and, well, all of Australia, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah,
there's a place for that medium, and it allows us to reach people and places that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach.
Yeah.
So there's a plus to that. But again, I prefer the contact. When you said, "Oh, should we do this over Zoom or in the studio?" I went, "I'm in the studio."
Yeah. Was it because I said studio, or just because I said we could have a beer as well?
That might have been it. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I just omitted that piece. Yeah.
Okay. So dive spots. I want to know, what is your favourite dive spot of New South Wales?
Well, whatever I say, I'm going to be in trouble here. So.
Oh, yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. The place I'd pick is probably Jervis Bay.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I'd pick Jervis Bay is because there is such a variety of spots there.
Yeah.
Pretty much any weather you can get out in. Not always, but 99 times out of 100 you can get out there. There's some spectacular dives there with the seal colonies, both north and south. You've got a couple of accessible wrecks there. You've got grey nurse there. You've got a really wide variety of sea life and just a fantastic set of sea cliffs and things there, which are just brilliant topography.
Yeah.
And then you've got the added attraction of the whales.
Yes.
And certainly the dive operation down there, Dive Jarvis Bay, has access, has a license to take people out so they can swim with the whales.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic as well. But if you're lucky enough to see them diving, like I explained to my daughter and I did, it's like, well, what can top that?
Yeah.
As a single dive site, would it be the best dive single site? No, I don't think so. But if you say, well, there's 70 or 80 dive spots that you can go to within the one area, you go, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Well, Jazz, my missus, and I, we went down to Jarvis. Oh, it's got to be 10, 11 months ago now. And I made contact with Sue Newson from Crest Diving, and she operates out of she's got her operation at the back of her house there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked a little bit at Jarvis, but I didn't pay particularly too much attention when I was doing my research before going, because I knew it was a good location. Got a mate that lives down there. He says it's great. Cool. We're going to come down and do some diving.
Yeah.
And it was only when I met Sue and picked up the tanks, and I could see she's decorated the floor of her dive operation with a design that shows the dive sites.
Right.
And it's so many.
There are.
And it was lovely. I mean, we only went off one of the very basic ones, Hymes Beach.
Yeah, okay.
Just to have a splash about. I think Jazz had just got a new wetsuit or something, so doing all that. But it was lovely. Absolutely lovely. And we can't wait to go again.
Yeah, there's not so many shore dives there. Hymes is certainly one of them. Murray's is another one.
Yeah.
But there's always somewhere to go, and the diving I think can be pretty good. So I think as a concentrated in an area, that would be my pick because of variety. If you said, no, you can't do that, you can only have one site.
Yes. One site.
It's either
one site.
Southwest Rocks or Julian Rocks.
Okay. I've not done Julian.
One of those.
I have actually. That's Byron Bay, isn't it?
Two. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Both of them can be spectacular on their day. Both of them are a little ride out. Julian Rocks is a little bit closer, obviously, than Southwest Rocks. So that can be pretty skippy. If the conditions are poor, then it's not a good dive, and so on and so forth. But on their day, they are spectacular. And that's not meant to diss a whole load of other good dive sites. It's like, North Rock at Broughton Island is a brilliant site. Looking Glass is a brilliant site as well. So there really are some very good sites around. But if you said, okay, well, you've got to pick one or two that regularly turns it on, I'd pick two, you see, not one.
Yeah, yeah. I like Julian Rocks. I like Southwest Rocks as well, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's only two operators out of Southwest Rocks, isn't there?
Correct.
Which one do you
last time
go
I
with?
looked, anyway, I was there 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. Which one did you dive with?
Southwest Rocks Dive Centre.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those boys have been doing that for a long time. Pete in the other place used to work at Frog Dive as well, so him as well. But the other one has accommodation upstairs, and it's fairly reasonable accommodation. So you're also in a situation, if you have to cancel, because it is weather dependent,
yes.
If you have to cancel, then they're happy to cancel their own accommodation, if you know what I mean. If you go outside for accommodation, well, you might well lose that.
You're kind of stuck. Yeah.
So just little things like that make a difference, I think.
Yeah. And we did Byron Bay, Julian Rocks last year.
Yeah.
Probably 14 months ago now.
Again, some good, for a small set of rocks, some quite different dive sites around it. Everything from a more beginner site, sort of 12, 14 metres, sandy bottom, always plenty of turtles around.
Yes.
Normally a lot of shoaling fish, can get mantas there as well on the pinnacles. But grey nurse and leopards. And the leopards there, or zebras, depends what you want to call them, are swimming And you
Yes.
go, well, of course they're swimming. But you go to a lot of places, like in Mozambique and places, they're not. They're sitting on the bottom.
Yeah.
But at Julian Rocks, they're moving around, and I think, again, spectacular animals, completely unconcerned about you, just gently flopping around. It'd be interesting to see them take off with that massive tail of theirs that makes them look like a thresher, which I haven't seen them do. I've only ever seen them move quite slowly, but I'm sure they can move quite fast. And then the grey nurse during the wintertime, in many numbers.
Well, I saw arguably the largest grey nurse I'd ever seen at Julian Rocks. And she was clearly not bothered by divers whatsoever. No. I know they're pretty crap with their eyesight anyway, but I was right up in her nose and she was
And I think
fine.
People who don't, I'm sure you've had this, but people who don't dive think you're absolutely nuts going looking for sharks. Whereas I think the people who do dive a bit are looking quite often for sharks, and we know some grey nurse, Labradors of the sea, just off they go, and they're quite skittish. So if you move quickly or do a sudden movement, you'll hear that crack of the tail, and they'll be off. They'll come back, but they'll take a little while to come back. So it's not a case of them chomping on you. They're curious, I think, which is why they come up so close as well. But I'm respectful of them, and I've never done anything stupid and try and touch them or anything silly like that. But they're very comfortable to come within a metre, half a metre of you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, that shot on the front of the book that's at Broughton Island, that's at North Rock. Wide angle lens, that puppy is half a metre from us, if that.
I got a similar shot, but it's all blurred out.
Right.
Because I think, where was it? Oh, it was the cathedral at Aliwal Shoal, South Africa. And she came over the top and just had a little feel, shall we say, of my strobe.
Right.
So once she realised it was something that was solid and plastic, it was kind of a crack of the tail and she was off.
Bang.
Just at the same time as I'd pressed the shutter button.
Right. Okay, nice. But I remember the day that particular shot was taken at Broughton Island, and the visibility was just magical. It was a good 25, 30 metres visibility, and I've got a shot there that we counted 27 sharks in.
Really?
It was just fantastic. Just fantastic.
See, we were unlucky because we were going to do Broughton Island on the way back down from Byron.
Yeah.
But the weather turned, so there was no way we were going to get out there.
We did a dive trip, me and my buddy Matthew, and Barb was with us as well, up north, and we were doing solitary. It was Southwest Rock, Solitary Islands, etc. We were going to do HMAS Brisbane up to Wolf Rock and back. And as we went up, it was like one of those tour T-shirts, Southwest Rocks, cancelled. HMAS Brisbane, cancelled. Wolf Rock, cancelled. It's like, oh, for goodness sake. The weather was truly dreadful. So we had to do a bit of rearranging. But we still had we probably got 11 or 12 dives in, but in a slightly different order and not all the ones we wanted. But it was, weather dependent on a load of those things. So things like Pimpernel Rock out north of the Solitaries, well north of the Solitaries, I must have been up 4 or 5 times to try and dive that. Not yet.
What's the attraction to that one then? Because that's a name I've not heard before.
It's in the middle of pretty much nowhere. I think it's 40 metre type dive. So you need to be a bit more experienced on getting it, and extremely weather dependent, and you need a full boat to get there. So I desperately want to do that. We'll be trying it again in March. Which might not be the best time, but it's the best time we've got. So we'll see if we can get there. But otherwise, the North Solitary is fantastic. The anemones there are just anemone bays, reputedly the highest density of anemones anywhere in the world. I think the work experience kid got to count them. I'm not sure what happened there. And fish soup as well. Again, there's some really good dives there. So if you can't do it, you go, okay, fair enough. But there's pretty special diving there anyway.
Yeah.
So there's always more places to dive.
Oh,
there's always more places to dive.
Are you going to extend beyond New South Wales?
Well, I don't. I think if there was another book, it would possibly be sort of top 10 dive sites in each state. I think that's what I would do rather than pretend I could put together a book for Victoria. I couldn't. Have I dived in Victoria? Sure. But do I really know the dive spots? Good excuse to go down for 3 or 4 months. I think my wife might not be amused by that. But good excuse to do that. And sure, you could, use the local knowledge and talk to people there and do it. I don't think it's quite the same. So unlikely to do that. My experience in South Australia says there's some cracking diving there, but possibly quite a short book. If you really talk to people there, yes, you've got the leafy sea dragons, which are phenomenal. You've got HMS Hobart. You've got the sinkholes, Ewan's Ponds and Kilsby and things like that, which are pretty good. But there's large areas of not a lot.
Yeah.
You've got the cuttlefish and Wyler for that period of time. So we were lucky enough to do that this year. We did Rodney Fox and the Great Whites, and then came back and we did Wyler.
Oh, shut up, really?
Yeah, okay, sorry. And then we did Rapid Bay for the leafies.
You weren't on the same boat as Don Silcock, were you?
I wasn't. No.
Okay, thank God for that.
No.
He said, I'm going to go down and do Rodney Fox, then I'm going to go and do the cuttlefish, and lo and behold, Libby Sterling, a mate of mine from Queensland, she was on the same boat as Don.
Yeah. No, we weren't, and we were lucky because not only were we lucky with COVID because we just managed to keep slightly ahead of it, but the trip before us had been cancelled due to rough weather, 3 metre seas. So we were lucky to get it in. The seas were half a metre, nothing. We had great whites on every dive, so everyone got them, which was great. So really enjoyed that. I thought the cuttlefish were amazing, and just so accessible for everyone. Snorkelers.
Did you find a lot of divers at the dive site?
No.
Really?
No, we were midweek.
Okay.
So deliberately. Because apparently the weekends were a bit hectic. So again, talking to people who were there at the weekend, they said, the cars were everywhere.
Yeah.
But there's enough for everyone. I mean, there's only, I think this year the numbers were down to 120,000 on them.
What?
Previous year, 250,000.
Holy.
So unfortunately, they reintroduced commercial fishing of them. They protected them. Numbers went up. They went, well, there you go. Everything's peachy now.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, after a year, I'm sure there's no correlation. So no, we were lucky enough to be able to go midweek again with my mate Matthew and Andrew, and it was just fabulous. We did 4 dives, all of 5 metres of water. No deeper than that.
Yeah.
Kind of run out at 5 or 6 metres. And you might think, you're going to see cuttlefish every dive. But the behaviour is just fascinating.
Yeah.
And this is this thing about every time you go down, you see something different. You go, I've never seen that before. I'm sure I've seen cuttlefish, but I haven't seen that sort of behaviour before. And they were fascinating. So we did 4 dives on, enjoyed every single one. Again, lucky with the conditions. Mm-hmm. And thought, tick that box, beautiful, on we go. And I would do that again.
Really?
I would actually do that again. I thought it was so different and so accessible that I would go, yep.
Would you do it with a long snorkel and some weights?
No, I'd take the tank because, again, with the – and I remember you talking about this with the freediver. It's like, well, okay, you want to get down and take a shot? Fine, but I can reposition it. I can wait. I can see what's happening. I can see what the males are doing in terms of they have a bit of a dance off with each other, and protecting the female. And the female goes, no, I'll sneak off over here, and so on and so forth. So absolutely you can snorkel and see it all. I think you just get a different level of appreciation if you're just sitting there pretty much on the bottom just looking at what's going on for an hour and a half because air's not the issue. Yeah. But take your dry suit. Take your dry suit.
I'm an advocate of that. I like just positioning yourself somewhere and let the sea life do its thing around you. And if you're lucky enough to see something nice, then you do. And invariably, you are lucky enough.
Yeah.
If you're patient and you wait, it works a treat.
I agree. I mean, when you see divers, and I guess each to their own, who are basically charging around everywhere,
yes,
I know they are missing so much. Now, they're covering more ground than me. Big deal. I never do that. I'm a potterer and make no apologies for it because you see a lot more. And I think as someone who's keen on the photography side of it, it pays to slow down.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Place to slow down.
Yeah. I've lost count of how many dives that I've been on, around the world, and people come up from a dive and, did you see the turtle? Yeah. Oh, what about the X-Fish. Yeah, I saw that as well. Did you see the nudibranch? Did you see the scorpion fish? Did you see the, Indian waterman? And, they miss everything.
Yeah.
Just because they're going too fast.
I think when you start diving, if it isn't a metre long, you don't see it. So it's like, did you see the octopus? No, because they're beautifully camouflaged, of course. But I think as you dive more, you see stuff smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And then when you get into macro photography, you see the small stuff on top of the small stuff.
Yeah.
So you see the emperor shrimp on top of, the sea urchin, whereas previously it's never been there. Of course it's been there.
Yeah.
You just haven't seen it. So I think, again, it's one of those things that I think one's diving keeps evolving.
Yes.
As you get more experience.
Actually, I can't remember. I'd like to give the boys a shout out for those that get the photography moments. And there was one that was recently posted. Sorry, whoever you are, I can't remember your name. But there was a photo of a wobbegong, and it was only in post taking shot and going through his photo reel that he saw a nudibranch sat on the forehead of this wobbegong.
But I've done that numerous times. I've gone back through processing stuff and gone, oh, didn't see that there. I wish I had at the time. I would have taken a different shot. So even though you're going slowly, just slow down even more and have a good look.
Yeah.
And can you please, and keep up to date with the focal quality of the glass in your mask nowadays, because that's a big bonus too. If you haven't got optically corrected glass in your mask and you need glasses, do it. I know it's $400 or so, but it's worth every cent of it.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I was talking to, I'm rubbish with names today, the company that does the lenses down in, I think it's down in South Australia. But I had a good old nitter-natter on the phone with the woman, because obviously I've got glasses for reading, and I've noticed it over the last 12, 14 months where I can't clearly see the back of my camera.
Right.
So I'm taking photos, but I'm not entirely sure that they're in focus.
Yeah.
And as the eyes get worse, I'm having to try glasses on the outside of the lenses by various ways. And it's worked when they were just starting to go. But now that I need a glass for reading all the time, I need to get the glass in the
I think
mask.
Once you do it, you'll go, I wish I'd done that a while ago.
Yeah.
You really do. Now, unfortunately, you'll have to keep changing it because your eyes will keep getting worse.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah. But
it's worth it. It really is.
Yeah.
The amount of diving you do, it just makes all the difference.
Yeah. We're going to get it done. I think the missus is going to buy them for me for my Christmas present.
Is it? There's a Christmas present.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We do that once a year. That's all right. I know what's coming.
Yeah.
Timing with the eyes getting worse.
So there is one in DY, Ozbob.
Yeah.
Who did mine? Done a couple of sets for me. I don't know if he's personally is retired. He was close to that, but it's a proper optician's business, and they've probably continued it. So that's probably worth a look at.
Yeah. I was interested to find as well that because I was always under the illusion that it was a very limited amount of mask frames that you could get the glass put into, but I was drastically wrong. They can put it in a variety of frames now.
Some are easier for them than others.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying you can fit it to everything, but pretty much you'd be unlucky if you had a normal mask. You'd be unlucky if they couldn't fit it to.
Yeah. Well, one that I used to sell a lot in Thailand was the Freedom CEOS One, and they've got them on the list. So I might actually jump on the back of that and get one of those with the lenses in. What's your one?
God knows, I knew you were going to say that. Well, I've got a Hollis mask, which is really nice and soft as well. But if you said what is it, I'd go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's interesting again, that one. Some people are really into the tech side. The tech side of have you got the XYZ with the new, free flowing XYZ?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
What is it again? I have no clue. Do I have a good regulator that works? Yeah, I do. Oceanic gear.
Yeah.
It all works fine. Is there something better? Probably, but this works fine.
Yeah.
So I'm not a gear fundy.
Jeff asked me on the last episode because we were looking at the cover art for this, and he's like, "Oh, what's that mask?" I'm like, Aqualung. I couldn't remember the model.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you now.
Yeah. Well, the one with the corrections in it is an Oceanic mask, but I've also got a Hollis as a backup as well. So
yeah.
But if you said which Oceanic, I don't know.
Yeah. Hold on, what's Jeff got on the shelf? It's probably a Shadow or a mini Shadow, something like that.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So I can give a shout out to Oceanic. but not the specific one. I'm sorry, and I've got your BCDs as well, which are fine. But look, there's always new stuff coming out. There's always different stuff. There's stuff that looks smart, and as you know, sometimes you're looking at people and they've got every piece of gear going, and you're looking at them on the way out, going, not sure you know how to use that, though.
Yeah.
And in fact, I might have to keep an eye on you. I know you've got all the gear that opens and shuts, and it's expensive, but yeah.
That's the thing. People are, you can have all the money in the world and buy all the good stuff, but if you don't know how to use it, it's a bloody dangerous thing to be doing.
Yeah, It is. I did have a person, no names, no pactorial, but going out to do deep course and beautiful gear, but actually couldn't even assemble it.
Really?
So I'm going, ooh, okay. When were you last in the water? And have you actually ever used it? Oh, yeah, no, I've used this. I've done a lot of diving. Okay, fine. And then also suggested that they might wish to take a seasickness tablet because it was a bit choppy and we had to go out for 20, 25 minutes to get a bit of depth and back again. But decided that wasn't appropriate. So funnily enough, didn't do any diving, had a dreadful period in the boat whilst we were all diving, throwing up, feeding the fish. Yeah. Came back and again I said, well, next time take a seasickness tablet. He said, I don't get seasick. Okay, whatever you think. So all the gear, no idea.
Yeah. I've seen a few in the past.
Yeah.
I've actually, I did actually put a customer on the boat and ban them from diving for their own safety before. It's only one time I've ever done it.
Yeah.
But much the same. Too much money, not enough sense.
Yeah.
That's not saying that people out there with too much money have got no sense at all.
No. I just I'd be happy to have more money and trade off a bit of sense, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not where we are at the moment. But yeah, it's just interesting. You get all types. You've seen hundreds, thousands of people that you were teaching to dive, and there's the people who are just nervous and talking all the time. There's people who are dead quiet and nervous. There's the people, all the bits in between. There's the people who tell you how good they are and how much diving they've already done, and they're on their own water, and it's possible, but
There's a mate of mine. I'm laughing just thinking of him now. Dino Jenkins, a little Welsh fella, lovely fella. But as soon as someone starts to mention numbers,
right,
I can just picture in his head now going, "Oh no, you didn't just mention numbers." Oh dear. But it's funny you say about assembling equipment, because one of the main complaints that I used to get in Papua New Guinea was because it's a rather lush resort. People had money, so they came expecting everything to be done for them.
Right.
And if it was their first dive with us, I would insist that they set up their own equipment so that we can check their knowledge of the equipment and the procedures. And it was always the more well-off people that moaned because they've not done it for years and probably wanted to avoid embarrassment, but actually embarrassed themselves more. Whereas those people that had clearly saved many years to go to a nice location, all over it like a tramp on chips.
Yeah. It is interesting that that part as an instructor, isn't it, or dive master or whatever the role is, just assessing that human behaviour and what you can do to help yourself and also whoever it is you're leading not get into a spot of bother, even if they're not willing to accept the help sometimes.
Yes. It's I'm sure you've seen I had Gareth Locke on a while ago. Quite a while ago now, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, and I met his buddy up in Newcastle only last week, who is focusing on human factors, and he's a pilot himself, military pilot. And we got into the realms of talking about safety of diving, etc., etc. And I think there's scope for it, and I hope we see it in our lifetime that the safety element gets increased even more, because I can't help feeling that there's been a little bit of a drop in it due to having to try and get the customers through the door to make a coin. And corners get cut, but those corners get cut so many times that it becomes the norm. So I think the norm might need a bit of a reset, and that might upset a few people when they hear it.
Yeah,
but it's just my opinion.
Yeah,
and you can't falter on safety.
I agree, and we're lucky. Or it's an active decision at Frog Dive that we don't run 8-to-1. Ever.
Yeah.
Which is good because I'm not teaching it 8-to-1.
Yeah.
I just refuse to do it. I just don't believe, certainly in our waters here, that you can give people a good and safe experience if that's what you're working with. You cannot keep an eye. I can't keep an eye on 8 people.
No. That as an example, 8-to-1, even with assistance, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. I'd rather, in fact, the other chap I was talking to last week, Ryan, he's got an operation up in Newcastle, and he will not reduce his prices for courses.
Yeah.
He refuses to.
Yeah.
And quite rightly so.
Good on.
He keeps those prices where they are and where they're meant to be, and delivers an exceptionally safe and knowledgeable course.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to try and get more bodies through the door, as it were.
Yeah, and as you say, let's recognise that there is a trade-off. The organisations are trying to introduce more people to diving, make it more accessible. The equipment's safer pretty much every year.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you get equipment failure. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you look after it, it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's normally diver error.
Yes.
That does that. So what can you do to eliminate the error? Well, you can do better training. And then hopefully part of that training is encouraging people to dive within their own limits so they don't need that extra assistance. They look at the water and go, I'll come back next week.
Yeah, I'm done.
That's it. That's
Time
it.
for a coffee down there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Time for a bacon egg roll. Thanks. Yeah. I'm going to open this.
Yeah, go for it.
Cheers.
It's actually a really nice beer.
It is.
I've not had this one before.
3 sheets.
What's it called?
3 sheets. Lord Nelson Brewery.
3 sheets.
It's great.
Yeah.
Can be to the wind too.
It can be to the wind. Yeah, very good. Shout out to that beer company. Bob on. Cheers.
Yeah, local pub in just in the Rocks.
Oh yeah, that place I used to go
Lord Nelson Brewery.
before
Fantastic.
lockdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, just going back to the book again.
Yeah.
Each dive site is there mention? We've just been talking about safety. Is there mention of experience levels, that kind of thing?
I actually can't remember. I think what we did was basically cut out pretty much all the dives over 30 metres.
Gotcha.
So, for example, there are a couple in there over that, and you go, well, why are those in there? Because we'd already laid out the book, and taking them out would have caused a massive rerun. So to be honest, there's a couple in there, you go, well, hang on, that one's over 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But the way we approached that was to say, well, we won't put in dives that we know are particularly tricky, and we're not going to put deeper dives in there to encourage people to go to the book and go, well, hang on, I could go down to 45 metres and do that wreck.
Yeah.
So we're just not going to put it in there.
Yeah, yeah. And I've just flicked open the book, and lo and behold, I'm on Clifton Gardens, Chowder Bay.
There we go.
I know it's not the greatest of visibility, but I do really enjoy that dive site.
I think it's a really good dive site, but I think it's also one that pays to be more experienced. If your buoyancy's not on,
yes,
it's just going to be a cloud. You've also got to be comfortable moving around slowly and taking your time, and it helps if you know what you're looking at. Now, having said that, we take beginners down there because we can pretty much always – I mean, if you can't get in at Clifton, you can't get in anywhere, pretty much. So we can do that. And if you dive there enough, you know that even with a beginner, you're going to show them a seahorse, you're going to show them an octopus, you're going to show them a moray, or you're going to show them cuttlefish. There's 5 or 6 things that they're going to see and go, wow, that was great. I've never seen those before. So even that, it makes it a good site for beginners, but it really rewards good buoyancy.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got to say, my missus, she's not a massive macro fan, as it were.
Neither's me.
But we'll do 70, 80 minutes in there, and she'll come out happy as right as rain, Yeah.
Because there's a lot in a small area.
There is, yeah. I mean, the pier itself's only, 20 metres, 25 metres?
Something
the
like
diving
that.
area of it.
Yeah. And falling apart.
Yeah. It makes me laugh, though, seeing all those fishermen on the top. Why the hell are fishing
what
there?
Are they doing there?
No clue.
And unfortunately, you see the rays that they've caught and they've just taken the wings off them and chucked them back in, and you see the leather jackets, the fan-bellied leather jackets. There are significantly fewer there than there were 5 or 6 years ago even.
Yeah.
They've just been reefed out of the water. And I think it's a real shame.
It is.
And occasionally they'll get a passing kingfish. Occasionally.
Yeah, in a blue moon.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then all their mates think you're going to go down there and catch kingfish.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah. Oh, well, c'est la vie.
Yeah, well, and the morays end up with hooks in them as well, and the octopus as well.
There's been I saw a few. There's been a few hook removal attempts, hasn't there?
Yeah, and it gets constant cleanups. There's a group there who do great work, and I've joined them a couple of times in terms of cleanups. Most people have done cleanups there, I think, because there are a lot of fishers that go down there. And there's also a lot of families and picnics and stuff, and the stuff blows in the water and, all of that sort of stuff. So it needs constant cleaning up.
Yeah, yeah. I think a little bit of knowledge as well. I mean, there's those seahorse hotels there as well, which they've got buoys on.
Yep.
And
so let's cast at those.
Yes.
See what's out there, shall we?
Well, even better, let's moor a boat off them,
Yeah, I saw that. Actually, I think some freedivers had unfortunately attached some hoops there to do some diving through off the as well, which is a little bit.
I'm not so sure it was
naughty.
freedivers.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Whoever it was, silly boys and girls.
It's definitely something to do with buoyancy. Well, buoyancy for divers or diving through for the freedivers. However, I think they got removed a couple of days after the photos went up.
I would hope so.
Yeah. Good on. Are you diving this weekend?
I'm trying to. No, I'm not diving this weekend. I'm teaching the following weekend. I'm doing an advanced course, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
This weekend, I'm not diving at the weekend. I actually try and avoid the weekends now because everyone else is diving at the weekend. And I have the flexibility to dive during the week. So me and the key buddy I dive with, Matthew Kempton, we tend to dive during the week. So I am going to hop in the water either Thursday or Friday when things have just settled down a little bit because it's was pretty average over the weekend.
Yeah, we were contemplating diving like Friday, Saturday, but the weather was just disastrous, wasn't it?
Well, I was down. I was actually down in the Illawarra on the weekend. So Saturday I went down to Wings over Illawarra to the air show there. I've had better weather, I must admit. I think they managed to get about 50% of the flying display in the air, but they tried, and I absolutely get them pushing through because they had to cancel last year completely. So they've been in this holding pattern for a while. So we did that, and then we were going down to dive Jervis Bay the next morning.
Okay.
So we were staying down there in Vincentia, which is just next to Huskisson.
Yes.
But we cancelled it on the Wednesday because they'd already cancelled the diving on the Friday and the Saturday.
Yeah.
And yes, they had their fingers crossed for Sunday morning, but it's like, even if you go out, it's going to be an average dive. I'm not going all the way down there for an average dive inside the bay at Bowen Island, which I'll bet you is where it was, rather than going down to Drum and Drumsticks, which is outside where the seal colony is and stuff like that.
And it's that balance, isn't it? You're working out of all the decidedly average dive and then all the cleanup of all your gear and all the faff when you get home.
It's a long way to go for an average dive.
Yeah.
Through no fault of their own.
No.
The conditions just weren't letting themselves. But we went down anyway because we paid for the accommodation and they wouldn't give us our money back. So we went down and had dinner there and then came back the next day. So there we go.
Fair enough. Oh, we're popping down to not diving at all this weekend. We're going down to, fingers crossed, Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's unique.
Yeah. Well, Jazz has got her family down there, and we've not been down for. Oh Christ! It's got to be 18 months.
And have you dived down there much? Have you
No, I've not.
diving in the bay and stuff
No,
like that?
I was gonna dive Melbourne, and then COVID hit, so I've not had the opportunity.
Right.
But yeah, we'll have that this weekend coming. We'll get down to Victoria and just do something completely different. So. Take the cameras and see if we can get some landscape photography, that kind of stuff.
Right. Right, nice. Because the piers down there is certainly in the bay is where the diving's at, and the growth on them is spectacular.
Is that
absolutely spectacular? It really is.
Have you dived Flinders Pier?
Flinders, yes. Rye, Flinders. Gone down to Portsea. I haven't done a lot of diving, and I'm not claiming to.
Yeah.
And Blairgowrie. And did that first 2 years ago. I think, again, we just sneaked in outside of COVID for the spider crabs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which come in, if they're coming in. This year they didn't.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things, there's just a wholesale netting and taking them out of the water, and funnily enough, they didn't show up this year.
Yeah.
It might not be related to that, but it certainly wouldn't have helped wiping out a few thousand of them.
No.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel, for goodness sake.
Oh, they climb over themselves. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It's quite amazing. And I really enjoyed that. So that was the first time I'd seen that. So we were hoping to incorporate that in the South Australian trip this year, having done Ewan's Ponds and Kilsby, come back through Melbourne. But COVID was getting a bit iffy at that stage, and we could just see things starting to close down. And we just went, let's head back to Sydney.
Yeah.
And as it happens, the crabs didn't arrive in the numbers that they had done previously. They might have been somewhere in the bay, I'm sure, but they weren't at the piers.
Yeah. I was talking to, because I don't know if you have been made aware that Flinders Pier, the Victorian Parks and whatever it's called, are looking at demolishing a section of the pier.
All right, no.
And yeah, it flashed up on my, of all things, social media some months ago that Sir David Attenborough had written a letter in defence of the demolition, or against the demolition. Sorry.
Okay. I know he's certainly written support for the spider crabs, because there is a thing called Save Our Spider Crabs, SOS.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. So they're certainly trying to get the rules changed. And I think the Victorian government, they've got a balance, I guess, tourism versus shooters and fishers and all of that sort of stuff. So I kind of get that, but they changed the bag limit, I think, from 30 to 15. It's like, okay, so 10 of you go down and 15 per day. It's a lot of crabs,
it is,
I think.
Yeah. But no, this one was more again.
Was the actual pier itself? Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
To do with the sea dragons as well.
Right. Yes.
But I noticed.
Seen the Wheaties down there.
Yeah, and a couple of days ago, the guy that I spoke to was Charles Rees, who is kind of spearheading the anti-demolition front. They've got about 40,000 signatures already.
Good on them.
Yeah, to push.
I'll have a look at that. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. I'll tag him in this, and then I think we'll maybe get him on the show as well and get some more detail on it, because it seems to be carrying forward quite well now. Yeah, and so it should, because I think, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. I think the government announced that they were going to do the demolitions of the section of pier right when COVID hit. So it was kind of hidden by the headlines of COVID. So it was it was either perfect timing or just coincidence, but I think maybe the former than the latter. It's
like bringing out new policy on Christmas Day. It's like
yes, yeah. So we'll have a look at that one. I'd like to get down there and dive it. It's on the radar.
Well worth doing. Worth doing. And I'm sure there's an awful lot of diving outside of the bay. I haven't done it, so can't talk about it.
Well, we were looking at a mate of mine who's a film producer, and we were looking at he invited me to be the dive safety officer, as it were, for a kind of a fly on the wall kind of doco thing, travelling from Adelaide up to Cairns and diving along the route. So Flinders was one of the locations.
I was going to say, if you're going to go straight from Adelaide to Cairns, there's no diving.
It's a long way with no diving in it. But going the scenic route.
Right, okay. I was going to say, wow, okay.
But a lot of the places that you've mentioned, while we've been talking, are all points that we were looking at targeting as well.
I thought I was really surprised by Ewan's Ponds. I haven't done freshwater diving, so that was interesting to get in there, and the absolute clarity.
Where's that one, sorry?
Ewan's Ponds, so Mount Gambier, which is near where Kilsby sinkhole is and some of the other sinkholes are. Yeah. But the beauty of Ewan's is that you don't need special certification to go in there. You don't need guides or anything like that. There's basically 3 linked ponds. Maximum depth, I think, is maybe 14, 15, 11 metres in the first one. And then you go through a small channel that's probably only, I'm going to say 2 metres deep, that links the pond and then into the next one and into the next one. You have to go through their equivalent of Parks and Wildlife. It's not quite called that. It's called something else. But you can just book it yourself, pay $35, I think it is, and do that and basically drift down from the top to the bottom, absolutely crystal clear. You're not in there for the fish life. There is actually some fish life, but that's not what you're there for. You're there for just stunning clarity.
Yeah.
And then we also took the opportunity to dive Kilsby Sinkhole, which was a bit more of a you needed to go with the approved people and all the rest of it. And I get that, because if you noodle down into the wrong part, you can get down to 65. Not that we were going in that part. There's a clear sort of line, but I think it's 26, 28. So it's still a little bit deep. But again, you can look up and see the platform and the clouds, and they do a really good gin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do, yeah. Sinkhole Gin, it's called.
Oh,
yeah, right. So if nothing else, you can buy that.
We sound like a pair of drinkers talking about diving.
I'm just saying. The water is, the spiel is the water's so pure that we make gin out of it. But Ewan's Ponds, I thought was spectacular. Again, it's one of those ones I would go back and do. I wouldn't actually do Kilsby again. I've done that.
Why's that?
Because it's a big hole, which you kind of go round and round, and you go, yes, it's really clear, but you kind of circle around for 40, 45 minutes, and then you come up and you go, okay, that was pretty cool. And the third time you go over the kangaroo bones, you go, okay, I've got them.
Yeah.
So there's not much else apart from the experience of doing it and the clarity of the water, which is fantastic. So very glad I've done it. Wouldn't do that one again myself, but I would go and do Ewan's again because it's simple to do. And you go, if we had a half-decent day, which we didn't, but if you had a half-decent day with sunlight, it would be just spectacular. Yeah. Spectacular.
That's the thing with stuff like that, isn't it? You get the sunlight coming through, the shards of light. It makes a fantastic shot.
Just brilliant. Brilliant. And again, Rapid Bay Jetty, great spot for the leafy sea dragons. But even without them, it would be just a spectacular dive because you're right under this jetty. There's an area there called the aquarium, for good reason, with the fish on it. Again, we were very lucky with the conditions, but fantastic. Really, really good.
And did you find some leafies?
Yes.
Well done.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, each dive that we were there. So I think on the first dive, we were really happy that we found one, and that was at the Bluff out of Victor Harbour, which was an iffy dive, really. The conditions weren't so good. But the next day we thought, well, we've ticked the box. Now let's try and see what else we can do. And talk to one of the local operators. They go, oh, no, you need to go here, here, and here. And sure enough, you go here, here, and here with that information. There they are.
Yeah.
And they're quite big.
Well, they look it, don't they?
Yeah, they're quite big.
And yet, I refer back to Don again, Don Silcock, and he was saying how difficult they are to find because they blend in so well.
They do blend in well, but I think it's like anything else. Once you've seen them and you've got your eye in and you know what you're looking for, it becomes a lot easier. But funnily enough, they're well camouflaged. Like the Wheaties are well camouflaged too. Yeah. Once you know where they are, though, and where you're going to find them, chances are you'll find them. Yeah. Chances are you'll find. It's a bit like stonefish. There's no stonefish here. I'll bet there are. They just don't put your hands down.
Yeah.
Same thing.
There's a dude, I don't know whether he's a diver. I need to have a look. I've just recently started having a look on TikTok and stuff like that. And you get through all the crap, all the people dancing in front of the screen and stuff. And then there's people who actually generally make
some of your interviews you're a fan.
Yeah. There's you get through the rubbish. And there's this chap, I can't remember his name now, I'll find it for next time I'm on, but he's over Perth way, he's Western Australia. But he seems to know everything about every fish and anything that lives in water whatsoever. So he's finding these amazing like spider crabs and rockfish and putting them on display for the camera, but in the correct fashion. He's not manhandling them. Yeah. He's doing it as though he's a biologist, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I must admit, TikTok's one of the other social media platforms that sort of passed me by.
Yeah. Believe you me, I'm not going to get into it. There's too many people dancing around like silly buggers on it.
There you go.
But I've got to look at everything, see what's going on.
True.
And I'm sure he's got an Instagram. I'll find it. But I'll when I do, I'll tag it and I'll let you know. He's a good one to have a look at. Yeah.
As I say, there's always more to learn, and there's people that know an awful lot more than me about it. So.
Yeah. I find him very interesting. I should find his name, but I can't be bothered. I'll have a look for next time.
Look it up later. That's it.
All right, mate. Well, I think we'll wrap it up.
You're happy?
We've been going nearly an hour and a half. See, time flies when you're having fun and a beer.
Yeah. And if you edit it down, you'll get at least 20 minutes out of that.
Exactly.
That'd be good.
18 at a push. Just very quickly before we disappear, where can people get hold of your book?
So a number of the dive shops stock them, which is great. Frog Dive is one of them, but Dive Centre Manly stocks them as well, amongst others. So we try and move them through the dive shops rather than just do them centrally. But if you can't find them, then Oz Diver, which is an online magazine that comes out on a quarterly basis that Johan is the editor for and I'm a contributor to, they have a site and you can get the books there. Happy
days. All right. Well, we'll sort out the links and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm literally weeks away from redoing our website, and it's all brand new, schmick, high fives, all that kind of thing. And I'm more than happy to put a link in there for you as well. Thanks. So anyone who's looking for the books, if you can't find them and you don't live in Sydney, you want to order one, then maybe we can put a link in there for you as well.
Great.
Too easy.
All right.
All right, mate. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thanks,
and thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure.
I think we better go and get another beer.
I think we should. Thanks very much.
Happy days.
Cheers.
Thanks now.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
This is Scuba Goat Under the Sea, the podcast for the inquisitive diver.